Welcome, everyone, to the third lecture delivered by Hava Tirosh-Samuelson on modern Jewish philosophers. I guess there's no more invitation to join us for the next one because we are done now. This is the last one. This one will be on Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. I'm Stanley Mervis, the Director of Jewish Studies and the Grossman Chair of Jewish Studies at Arizona State University. Jewish Studies at ASU serves as a resource for exploring the Jewish experience in all its dimensions, including history, language, religion, and thought. Our degree program, certificate, and courses bring that scholarship into the classroom. Our public programs, such as this one, bring the same scholarship into the wider community and to audiences around the world. These programs are free and open to everyone, regardless of background or identity, and are made available online shortly after each event. I'd like to now introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor Hava Tirosh-Samuelson, who is a Regents Professor of History and the Irving and Miriam Lowe Professor of Modern Judaism at Arizona State University. She served as the Director of Jewish Studies at ASU for nearly 17 years. Before joining the faculty of ASU in 1999, Tirosh-Samuelson taught at Hebrew Union College in New York, Columbia University, Emory University, and Indiana University. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Outstanding Young Faculty Award at Indiana University, the Distinguished Alumna Award of Stony Brook University, and the Gary Crayon Bowl Difference Maker Award of Arizona State University in 2004. A Jewish intellectual historian, Tirosh-Samuelson writes on Jewish philosophy and mysticism, religion, science, and technology, Judaism and ecology, and feminism and gender. In addition to over 70 essays and book chapters, she is the author of the award-winning Between Worlds, The Life and Thought of Rabbi David ben Yehuda Messer Leon in 1991, Happiness in Premodern Judaism, Virtue, Knowledge, and Well-Being in 2003, and Religion and Environment, The Case of Judaism in 2020. Her Jewish Environmentalism in the Post-Secular Age, Earthly Spirituality will be coming out with Routledge Press, and will be out in June of 2026. So you can look forward to that. That's the next one coming. Congratulations, Chava.
Thank you.
She is also the editor of 8 volumes and serves as editor-in-chief of the Library of Contemporary Jewish Philosophers, a series of 21 books featuring outstanding contemporary Jewish thinkers. Tirosh-Samuelson is the recipient of over $3.5 million in external grants, which funded conferences, workshops, public lectures, and publications on religion, science, and technology, and on various aspects of the Jewish historical experience. A nationally and internationally renowned scholar, she has served on the boards of the Association for Jewish Studies and Zygon, the Journal of Religion and Science, and is a fellow of the International Society of Science and Religion. In 2008, she was among the founding members of the International Jewish Science and Medicine Group and has organized and managed the annual conference for the past 16 years. So please join me in welcoming Professor Tirosh-Samuelson.
Thank you all. Find a place to sit, all right? And it's wonderful to see you all. And thank you all of those who are online with us. I cannot see you, but you can see me, I'm sure. And before we start, maybe we should take a note of the situation in which we find ourselves right now. Obviously, we are in the midst of a war. And you know the saying, when the cannons roar, the muses are silent, right? That actually, I learned it today, that it's based on a Latin kind of pithy statement that is attributed to Cicero. And in the original, it was, for among arms, the laws are silent. So in other words, when there's war going on, there's no law. Now we are saying we don't talk about law, we talk more about the muses, art, the creativity, spirituality. But precisely because of this unique moment in which we find ourselves today, I really feel the loss of the person that we are going to talk about quite a lot today, and that's Rabbi Sacks. Have you ever met Rabbi Sacks? Have you listened to you met him? You know who he is? That's great. And Rabbi Sacks, I'll tell you a lot about him, but I knew him personally since he was one of the people I featured in the Library of Contemporary Jewish Philosophers. He's volume 2 in that library. So you'll see a picture of him, so you'll know more about it. But we clearly need to talk, and were he alive today, he would probably help us in many ways to think about this very unique moment. So here we go. This is, as you know, I see some new faces here, but this is already the second year that we are doing this series of lectures on contemporary Jewish philosophers, hence the Latin numeral 2. This is our topic for today. To those who were not with us before, the previous lecture was about Zalman Schachter Shalomi. That was last week, last Thursday, and that was February 26th. And before that, we had the lecture about Emil Fackenheim. What do you need?
Yes.
Oh, it's too high? All right, here we go. So, if you were here with us last time, you know that I tried to explain why am I doing this? Why do I think that it's important for Jews to learn about Jewish philosophers? So my really personal involvement is to, and my purpose in it, it is not exactly the same slide I had last time, but it's the same idea. But basically, I would like to inspire people to get to know more about Jewish philosophy, because Jewish philosophy throughout the history of the Jews, but especially in the modern period, is just wonderful, just excellent. There's so much depth, there's so much creativity, and I feel that there's a real loss when people don't know it. So that's the purpose of offering 3 lectures last year, 3 lectures this year, and maybe we'll do something next year as well. How do I do it? I always, as I explained in the previous 2 lectures, I do it as an intellectual historian. In other words, I don't examine whether a particular statement that a philosopher is saying is right or wrong, true or not true. I don't do that. That's the work of an analytic philosopher, which is less of interest to me. I'm an intellectual historian. I want to understand how people function in a particular social, economic, cultural setting, and therefore I tell their stories, something that most philosophers don't do. Most philosophers don't explain this life of the person that they try to understand. They don't talk about his or her life. They just talk about ideas. And I think that that's not a very good way of teaching philosophy. So I care about ideas, I care about the context, and that's what you got from me in the lecture last year and in the lecture this year. And hopefully every person who's participated in the lecture can at least buy 1 book by each of the thinkers that was presented here, and just get to know them, because they are really phenomenal thinkers and very special individuals. So this, as I told you, this is Rabbi Sachs was featured in the Library of Contemporary Jewish Philosophers. This is me up there in the Office of Jewish Studies at ASU, and those are the books in the library. There are 20. I featured 20 people, and the 21st volume was actually based on a conference that I did here at ASU in 2016. These are the themes that I try to cover in the library. My point is that Jewish philosophy is not just about ideas such as the conception of God, or the relationship between mind and body, or how do we know what we know. Okay, so it's more than that. It includes all of the topics that you see listed up there. So it's very rich. And because of the richness of Jewish philosophy, I think we have a problem, because in most philosophy departments in the United States and in Canada, I think I should say as well, Jewish philosophy is not taught. Jewish philosophers are not mentioned. And that's in my view, a real lacuna in the way philosophy is taught, or has been taught, at least in the last 50, probably more, even 70 years. So this is just to give you the spectrum of what the library covers. Last lecture last week here focused on Zalman Schachter Shalomi, and I would like to thank the daughter of Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who attended the class. She just sent me 3 of the videos that she made with her own father,
Rabbi Shalom, and I hadn't had time to look at what she sent me, but I'm gonna do it very soon. But I try to show you
this very unique person try to address the kind of challenge of life after the Holocaust. In the post-Holocaust era, what is one supposed to do? And what he tried to do is to recreate, reconstruct, rethink, reformat, as he said, Judaism for the new age. So that's what we covered last time. I will not go over it as I normally do in a regular class, but that's not a regular class. But if you have not had a chance to listen to the talk last time, just ask from Lisa Kaplan, and I'm sure she will send you, and they all get it, right? They all get all three lectures, right? So, and all the lectures are on the website. So you can listen, and I won't go over it today, but that's what we did last time. So here's the person who is our focus for today. And if you remember when I showed you pictures of Fackenheim in the first lecture, you can really see how he aged over the years. These pictures don't show you aging, more or less kind of from the same period. And the reason is Jonathan Sacks, as you can see from the dates, passed away when he was only 72 years old. He was rather young, passed away due to cancer. And it's, in my view, a really sad loss of a person who could have been an enormously important, he was important, but had he been with us still, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, but the world would have been a bit different and much better in my view. So that's the message I'm going to suggest to you. You can see from the pictures that the one from the second from the left, that's he was the chief rabbi of the actually only the Orthodox communities in the United Kingdom. He's also a Zionist. That's why I chose that particular picture. I'll say more about that toward the end. He was an educator, a major commentator. You'll see I have a whole list of all the things that we can talk about. And I included the last picture when he's engaged in environmental work because he was very much a person who was engaged in and responding to the ecological crisis and the challenges the ecological crisis poses to all of us. So that's just a selection, but he has many, many more pictures that you can see. Now, how shall we think about him or talk about him? To begin, he's a modern Orthodox rabbi. So even though some of his ideas you would consider, or some people would consider, way to the left of where modern Orthodoxy is today, he did not consider himself a liberal Jew. He really did not. He really understood himself very much as a modern Orthodox Jew, but he had people to the left of him and to the right of him. So it means that it wasn't really easy to be who he was. His position is very subtle. It's very sophisticated and subtle. And he had critics from the right and from the left. So ultra-Orthodox didn't like some of the things that he stood for, and I'll explain what. But other people to the left of him, people in the Reform movement, the conservative movement in England, also didn't like everything he stood for. He was also a Jewish studies academic. He really was very involved in Jewish studies, and we'll get to his books in a minute, but you cannot read his many books, and I have about 10 or so here with me, without realizing that he really knew Jewish studies from beginning to end. So he's very much an academic. He's also a member of the House of the Lords, right? He was appointed to the House of Lords, 209. So that means that he's very aware, very in tune with politics in England. So it's not just a person who is teaching in a Jewish institution or a rabbi, as he was, of two important synagogues in London, but he knows politics, and he knows politics not only in England, he knows politics everywhere in the world. So he's actually a global figure, that's especially toward the end of his life for sure. A lot of his work is about the Bible. He's a biblical exegete, a commentator, a teacher. So that's why I wanted to show him in the previous, right, when I put this picture with the child probably in a bar mitzvah situation. That's what he's doing. I'll tell you more about the style of his writing in a second. But he's clearly a person who teaches philosophy through biblical commentaries. So his one modality that he uses a lot is how to unpack the biblical text, how to open it up, how to make sense of it. In a sense, it's almost like saying that he teaches philosophy through the Bible, through teaching the Bible. He's a public intellectual. I didn't make a list of all the awards that he received, but this is a person who really was known worldwide. Many, many awards, about 21 or 20 awards from various institutions. When I get to the end of the talk, you'll see why the public dimension, it's not just public intellectual. If you go down, he's also a public theologian. I'll explain to you what that means. But he's a very, very person involved in what's going on in the world today. Philosophically speaking, he focused primarily on moral philosophy, on ethics, but it's very combined in his case also with social theory and with political thought. He's a product of a particular kind of training in England, and that explains why he can do both of those things. But you'll see how all that affects the style that he writes. Mainly, if you look at the bottom line, I consider him a major spiritual leader, and in fact, a moral voice, as I call it, moral voice in a fragmented world. So what he's trying to do, the bottom line here, is that he's trying to figure out how to allow the world to accept the world in all its diversity and complexity and nuance, but at the same time, to create or at least protect what he considers the common good. So that's the challenge of his life. How do you allow for diversity while protecting the common good? How is it possible intellectually, rhetorically, philosophically? So he really was quite special. Now, this is a summary, as I've done in all the other lectures. This is a summary. You don't have to take notes here on that, write everything down. There's a lot there, but when you get the slides, you can have it all available. I'll highlight a few things here. The main point is that if you look at his early training as the early education, it's not Jewish education. He goes to non-Jewish schools, right? He goes to non-Jewish schools, and if you ask why, I'll explain why that makes sense in his case. But basically, his family represents an approach to Jewish modernity, which is associated with Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. I'll have a slide about him in a minute. But the idea is that Torah can go together with secular knowledge. So in the language of Samson Raphael Hirsch, it was Torah im derech eretz, Torah and secular knowledge. There's no contradiction between the modern world and Judaism. What there is compatibility and a particular message that Jews and Judaism have to share with the world. You'll see it in a minute. We don't have to do it right now, but if you look at the biography, the biography is very interesting because in the beginning, he didn't think about being a rabbi. He is going to be a philosopher. And he goes to Cambridge, studying with Bernard Williams. Bernard Williams is a major moral philosopher, died in 2003. And so he gets to the top of what British academia can allow. 1968 is a very important year. I'll show you a slide in a minute about it there to say more, but this was his turning point in his life. Basically, you can say that after 1968, he becomes a kind of a Baal Tshuva, a kind of a person who finds God and makes commitment to God as the center of his life. And academia is going to be second, kind of going down a notch, shall we say. So he's going to get his PhD. But after 1968, what matters to him is rabbinic training. So he switches to rabbinic training. He's going to get, along the way, he's going to get his MA and his PhD. But the thrust of his life is no longer academia. It's academia is part of the story, but not the whole story. So you can see that he was a rabbi. He was appointed rabbi in two important synagogues. He also taught at the major Jewish institution, Jews College, which later on changed its name to London School of Jewish Studies. But basically, he's a Jewish studies person. And he's very much trained as a historian. And that's very important because you can't read his books without realizing the depth of his historical knowledge. He's a rabbi in two separate synagogues. The more important one is Marble Arch Synagogue. Then he becomes the principal, but there they call principal, we call here chancellor of college or provost of a college, of Jews College London. Then he's the chief rabbi. From 1991 to 2013 is the chief rabbi. And those were very productive years for him in terms of publication, as you'll see. Then he's appointed to the House of Lords. 2016, he gets the Temple Award, Temple Prize for Science and Religion. And it was given to him for this book, Not in God's Name. That's the book that the Temple Award was specifically mentioned, but of course, everything else that he's done prior to this. And remarkably, he passed away very suddenly. Actually, in September of that year, I had an event that I organized here at ASU. We had an event with him to promote the last book that he wrote. This is the last book, Morality, and very shortly thereafter, he passed away. So it was really quite a shock. All right, so it's a fascinating biography. Here is the turning point, and we'll start unpacking all that. So in 1968, we mentioned it last time when we talked about Zalman Shalomi. We are in the midst of a global students' rebellion, right? All over the world, people are engaged basically in rethinking what life is all about. He decides, as a youngster, he was only 20 years old, he said, I'm going to the United States. And for 2 months, as a student, he goes to the United States. I have no idea how he managed to get to meet in person both of those figures, Rabbi Schneerson, the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, and Soloveitchik, who at the time was at the height of his power in Yeshiva University. But he manages to have interviews with both of them. And that's a very famous line. It comes from his essay in this book, The Great Partnership, but I have it listed for you, and I'll read it. Rabbi Soloveitchik had challenged me to think. Rabbi Schneerson had challenged me to lead. In both, though neither spoke of it, I sensed the extent to what Jewish life had lost in the Holocaust. So here's the connection between our first lecture this year with Fackenheim, when we focused on the Holocaust and how to make sense of the Holocaust for Fackenheim. So he's also struggling in 68, of course, it's the same problem that he's struggling with. Let me just remind you that 1967 is when Richard Rubinstein published his book about the death of God in, what is it called? After Auschwitz. That's the title of the book, right? After Auschwitz, 1967. And it's basically a death of God in the Holocaust. So those were very, very incredible, powerful years of a lot of turmoil. And I think that if you want to get a sense of what Sachs is all about, try to figure out how those two figures can be in one individual. Soloveitchik is all analytic, it's Talmudic studies, it's all logos, if you wish. The Lubavitcher Rebbe is also intellectually very, very deep. Maybe we should do one lecture sometimes about him, because he really was philosophically very adept. But his Hasidism is about emotions, all the stuff that we talked about last time. So emotionality, the inner life, spirituality. And in what he's telling us is that these two people are not contradictory to each other. So he's, in a sense, both Soloveitchik and in some way also Schneerson. Okay, makes sense to you? See what an interesting character he was. Now, I put those books in order in chronological order, just that you'll see the first three books, and I'll show you the covers. The first three books are actually very much Jewish studies kind of books. They're written by an intellectual historian. He really was very well trained, and he knew the entire gamut of the Jewish tradition. After 2000, with the book The Politics of Hope, which is this book, this is the beginning of a shift away from Jewish studies, and kind of opening it up to the world, if you wish. And he's trying to figure out big questions. And the big question for him, especially after 2001, that's September 11, 2001, what is the role of religion? What is the role of religion in the secular world? That is I'll tell you a lot more about it, but all of the books after 2000 and especially after 2001 are related to that issue. What does it mean to be a religious person in a secular world? The last book that came out just a little while ago, which was actually came out posthumously, Tradition in an Untraditional Age. That's a collection of essays, an excellent collection of essays that I highly recommend. But that's the problem. I just want you to understand the problem that was of concern to him. So this is, if you look at it, it's almost like publishing a book per year or per year and a half. It's amazing. It's an amazing productivity. Now, these are the covers. And if you are going to choose one book, obviously every person would like to choose whatever sounds right to them. But probably the book Morality, which came out in that's the last book that he published. The other two to the right of that book is published posthumously by his operation. I'll explain that in a minute. There's a whole group of people that perpetuate his legacy. So Morality, if you want to choose a book to buy, get hold of Morality. That's a beautifully written book. Everything else that he wrote was absolutely gorgeously written. So stylistic features. What's interesting about his style, it's really, as I explained to somebody else here in the room earlier, there's something very British about the way he writes. He really comes with the best of the British a kind of analytic tradition. That's how he was trained. And remember, he's a philosopher who's also a rabbi. Every week, he has to give a drasha, right? Every week, basically. So he knows how to write, but how to speak also to a large audience. And he is uniquely able of expressing complicated ideas in a very accessible manner. He loved what he called the drama of ideas. A versus B, religion versus science. So Athens versus Jerusalem. So he always uses those negation. I'll show you some examples of that. And he tries to show you how everything is kind of, ideas are always in conflict with each other, or could be in conflict with each other. If you look at the book, I go back to this slide, The Power of Ideas. You see that book? The Power of Idea means that, guys, ideas make life. Ideas really move history forward. That's kind of an Hegelian idea, but he was not an Hegelian philosopher like Falkenhayn. He really believed that ideas mattered. And that's probably something that we should all remember, because people think, oh, it's all economics. Oh, it's economics, right? It's all about the economy. No, maybe not all about the economy. Maybe ideas are more important than the economy, just for an example. So he writes very succinctly, lots of anecdotal, lots of personal stories of people that he met. Sometimes he talks about members of his family, but he always tells you a story and everything comes alive in a very beautiful way. So I hope that if you pick up one of his books, you will enjoy it as much as I do when I read his book. And it doesn't matter how many times I read a particular book, I always find new things that I didn't see before. Keep in mind that he spoke a lot in the public domain, in the BBC. So this book, for example, the book Jonathan Sacks, From Optimism to Hope, that's based on his BBC lectures or BBC's presentations. So He's in the radio, he's in television, of course, he does TED Talk. And then he has different kind of books. I put them separately because these are books written for the Jewish reader. They are organized very differently from the other books that I noted so far. And what he does, he actually uses the commentary form. He's writing essays about the biblical Torah portions. Okay, so you have Torah portions, and he's going to write an essay tied to a Torah portion. That tells you every week, right? So you have on the left, what you have here is basically his commentary to the Chumash. That's on the left, and you just pick it up, Bereshit, Shmot, right, Vaikra, and so forth, and you just read what he has to say. But also the studies in spirituality, the studies in ethics, all those books are also organized by the weekly Torah portion. And then at the bottom, you have the Siddur, and you have the Machzor, and you have the Haggadah. If you have not bought a Haggadah for this year Passover, highly recommend it. Actually, I just got this version. This is not too expensive, about $23, I think, a Haggadah or something like that. So maybe I'm off a little bit. But anyway, he's a marvelous interpreter and expositor of the Jewish tradition. So if you're a modern Orthodox Jew, that's what you're going to read. But I think that even one is not a modern Orthodox person, his explanation, his way of putting it all together makes a lot of sense. So I highly recommend that. Here is the style of these kind of books, of his exegetical kind of work. So it's really quite unique when he writes short essays, but the essays are not technically speaking homilies. They're not like a rabbinic homilies. Even though I put it in parentheses, the essays have a title. So he can write, let's say he wants to say something about the natural world. So he has an essay called Beyond Nature, and it fits the biblical portion in a particular way. But every essay is written very carefully. It's beautiful. It's only 3 pages. So you get the gist of the Torah portion for the week in 3 pages. and of course, he invites you to read a lot more than that. So he puts together in those essays history and philosophy and literature. He was a very well-read person. And he shows you the complexity of the biblical text and the relevance of the biblical text to our own life. So far, so good. You see how incredible this person was. Now, all this could not have happened without an operation behind him. So he could not have been as productive as he was. The 2 things on the left, Magid and the Cohen publications, those are basically publishing houses that are committed to his work. So it's amazing that those 2 can do he can publish. He doesn't have to be like me, and I have to go and find a publisher, and I have to convince them that, publishing a book about Jewish philosophy makes sense. He has 2 publishing houses that were committed to his work. He was also on TED Talk, also on the BBC. And if you are online, just check the Rabbi Sacks Legacy Trust. A lot of information is available through this website. So what you have here is a commitment to make his teachings available to the world way beyond, of course, when he was alive, but way beyond even his life. The bottom, the 2 things at the bottom, the Jonathan Sacks Institute in Bar Ilan, that's relatively new. I'm connected to this group of people, lectured in the first conference that there was about him, organized by the Institute, gave the keynote speech there about him. And then you have Yeshiva University. Okay, so in both centers, in Bar Ilan and in Yeshiva, you have people committed to perpetuating the legacy of Rabbi Sacks. These are 4 books about him. We're going to have more and more books in the next decade, I'm sure. The one to the left is the book that it's in my series of contemporary Jewish philosophers. It was what you have in all the books of the series is 1 essay, introductory essays, 4 essays by the person who is featured, and then an interview with me. So I interviewed him at his home in London. It was very beautiful event, and then it really is kind of very memorable time that I spent with this person. The next book is a book about him and Rabbi Greenberg. It's Greenberg, so it's comparison of Sachs and Greenberg's by Alon Goshen Gottstein, and that book is actually received, I think it was a finalist in the Rabbi Sachs Book Award that was given last year. Radical Responsibilities by a group of students of Rabbi Sachs, mostly associated with Yeshiva University, but not all. Some people are in England. And the other book is also from Yeshiva University, and an ode to joy, because his message was that Judaism is about joy. We'll get to it at the end. I have an essay there as well. So what did he know, and how do we make sense of him? So it's very important he really is Torah and Derech Eretz. In other words, Torah and secular knowledge. So on the secular, if you want, on the left, you'll see the sources. Basically, he's a very well-trained British philosopher. But he's a philosopher who focuses on moral philosophy and on ethics. But he's also very interested in political theory and in social theory. And very involved in the science and religion dialogue. This is his book that I will say a few words about in a minute. But he is part of a huge discourse, global international discourse, and he has quite a lot of knowledge about Christian religious philosophy. I don't think he has the same level of knowledge or had the same level in Islam, but Christianity, he very much knows some of the major contemporary thinkers that are moving the conversation today. On the Jewish side, of course, he knows it all. Reading Judaism, I should have put the biblical, the entire biblical tradition. He knows cold, of course. Jewish philosophy, all of it from Saadia Gaon to the present, Hasidism. But you will see in the list, which is missing, is Kabbalah. I don't think that he really was deeply engaged in Kabbalah. I don't think he was as familiar with Kabbalah as he was with other aspects of the tradition. As far as Zionism is concerned, he's very much on top of the history of Zionism, and he was also closely related in terms of conversation with leading Israeli thinkers, Aleph Bet Yoshua, Amos Oz, for example, Eliezer Schweitz. So he really knew the Israeli intellectual milieu, if you wish, very, very well. Now, we come to a kind of an interesting story, which I actually discovered relatively recently. So this lecture series started with Fackenheim. And remarkably, in this book, where it is, The Future Tense, Jews, Judaism, and Israel in the 21st Century. It's a book that he wrote published in 2012. 2012. And he really didn't want to publish the book. He was kind of forced to publish the book, in a sense, by reality. And the reality is the rise of anti-Semitism. So anti-Semitism, the resurgence of anti-Semitism led him to write this book. And in this, oh no, I was wrong. I got the date wrong. It's 209, not 212. And what's amazing to me is this paragraph about Emil Fackenheim, where he's basically saying Emil Fackenheim gave us the wrong story, as he calls it. That's the name of the section. So I'll go over it, and then you'll see it's amazing what he's saying here. So as one 20th century Jewish theologian, Emil Fackenheim, put it, Jews are commanded to stay Jewish in order to deny Hitler a posthumous victory. And we talked about that, right, in the previous two lectures. Jews are, in the biblical phrase, the people that dwells alone. This book, his own book, namely, is a challenge to that narrative. He's saying, I don't agree with Fackenheim. There's something wrong in the way Fackenheim told that story. Now he's telling us what's wrong. First, it isn't the Jewish story. The facts may be true, but the narrative is wrong. Second, it risks becoming a classic case of self-fulfilling prophecy. Third, it leads to a set of attitudes utterly inconsistent with classic Jewish self-understanding. It turns Jews into victims, and he thinks that that's a mistake. In his mind, that posture of victimhood is wrong-headed. It renders them passive-aggressive. It makes them distrust the world, which can lead to other or, that's his expression, yeah, other or, not either or, but other or, and self-hatred. Fourth, it generates policies that are self-destructive. Then it also, fifth, demoralizes. Okay? It's amazing. It leads Jews to leave Judaism. Who wants to be associated with such a thing called Judaism if it's all about victimhood? Number seven, it deprives Jews and humanity of the very thing that constitutes the Jewish message to humanity. The Jewish story told and lived, whose theme is the audacity of hope. Who said the audacity of hope? Do you remember? That's Obama. That's right. Obama said that. And most likely, it's not that Sachs listened to Obama. It's Obama read it in Sachs, because already in the book Politics of Hope, that is there already. And that book is from 1997. So what he's going to do, and that's his life project, is to tell the right story, the right Jewish story. My belief that many, perhaps most Jews within Israel and outside have forgotten the Jewish story. And what's a Jewish story? The journey from slavery to freedom, Pesach. Darkness to light, if you wish, that's Hanukkah in some way. From exile to the promised land, that's Zionism. A journey of faith sustained by faith. So this person, he's going to devote his entire life, his kind of public life, academic life, Jewish life, to telling the right story. So that's by way of introduction. So far, so good. You see where we are going? That makes sense? Now we're going to go deeper into some of the themes. So this is a summary of the themes, which I think kind of cuts across all his books. If you read everything that he writes, you will see some repetition. You will see some overlap. So it's not that every book says everything anew. No, there's a world view here and a very clear vision. So I try to tease out the major themes, and that we'll go over some of them after this slide. So what's the main theme? The main theme to the left, universalizing particularity. That might sound a little bit difficult to understand, but it's actually quite simple what he's saying. Particularity refers to being Jewish. Being Jewish is always done in the particular. You do A and not B. You're associated with this and not that. You have a history, you have a memory, you have a culture, you have practices. That's the particular. His life mission is to make the particular universally meaningful for humanity. So his argument is that Judaism is good for all human beings, not just for Jews. Okay? It's not limited. It's not just something parochial. It's something very universal. And that's, by the way, is exactly what Samson Raphael Hirsch in the 19th century already held. So he believes that traditional Judaism, and here he's quite clear, he prefers modern Orthodoxy over liberal forms of Judaism. He says specifically, I'm not a liberal Jew, I'm a modern Orthodox Jew. So why is that the case? He believes that traditional Judaism answers the predicament of where we are today. If we have problems in our families, in our society, in our mental health, in our every aspect of our life, for him, in a sense, the answer is traditional Judaism. At the same time, he recognizes and advocates and argues for multiculturalism, while also being, you'll see in a minute, how he was also critical of several things of multiculturalism because it went too far. So he's very much for pluralism. He takes a pluralistic position. That's religious pluralism, ethnic pluralism, cultural pluralism, religious pluralism. The title, the theme, collective responsibility, we'll come to it later, but that's the title of his dissertation, by the way. So in his doctoral dissertation in University of London, that was the title. So, and that's what he believed. He believes that what we need to do is to learn to be responsible for each other. So that's basically taking the idea of Kol Israel Aravim Ze Lazeh, all of Israel, all members of Israel is responsible for each other, taking that rabbinic text and kind of universalizing it. He was very much for the dialogue of science and religion, not conflict. There is no conflict between science and religion. They're different, but they're not in conflict. They are in dialogue, should be in dialogue. He was very much a Zionist. That's toward the end, we'll get to that. And he was very concerned about ecological issues, really wrote quite specifically about ecological matters and how Judaism can be the response to the ecological crisis. He also wrote about technological issues, our moral life in the age of technology. So if he were alive today, I can guarantee you he would have been writing a lot about artificial intelligence, because that's the key issue for our life today. And basically, I look at him as a person who articulated Judaism for what I call postmodern world. How you don't get stuck in postmodernism of the 1970s. You want to figure out a way to go beyond it. And he attempts to do that. And his message is that Judaism is about joy. Not so much about happiness, it's about joy. And how to live all life, all aspects of life, our joyous life, if you live it with this in mind. So that's kind of a summary of what he was about. Again, I mentioned this person, that's Samson Raphael Hirsch, the person who created modern Orthodoxy. At the time, it was called Neo-Orthodoxy, in Germany, in Hamburg, to be precise. And he was a critic of the reform movement, or what was at the time called the movement for religious reform. He was against it. And he started modern Orthodoxy as a response to the push toward reform. And he's saying, no, we're not going to do the reform. We're not going to do those kind of reforms that you guys propose, because the Torah is from God, that's all from heaven, as he used that expression. So Torah min hashamayim, Torah is from heaven, means that it's eternal. The Torah is eternal. I'm not going to change anything. We're going to do everything as it was before, but we're going to be very open to secular culture, to non-Jewish culture. So that's a fascinating figure, and believe it or not, actually, this is just an aside, but Samson Raphael Hirsch actually also was ecologically very astute and really understood how the biblical text is all about the protection of the natural world. So when I write about ecological matter, I'll also write about him. So Sachs, in the book that the last book that came out, which is essays that he published before and they were republished and mainly given as a gift to his wife, to Elaine, to Lady Elaine. So what you can see is a difference also between Hirsch and Sachs. Hirsch writes in the 19th century, when Jews are trying to become part of society, at least the Jews who wanted, in his position, wanted to be citizens. They did not go against citizenship. Some Jews did, but not Samson Raphael Hirsch. So Hirsch is all about accommodating the emancipation, accommodating integration, but remaining Jewish. Sachs is operating later, right, 70 years later or more, and he's trying to deal with postmodernism. And in postmodernism, it's a different game. It's a different challenge. And he has to figure out, okay, how I'm going to navigate with all this. And all the stuff that I put on the slide for you, these are elements of our societies, which he finds very problematic. And he has to deal with this, and he has to respond to this from the perspective of the Judaism that he wants to see us celebrating. So he's a major critic of individualism. He thinks that what's wrong in our society, that it's all about me, 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 me. And his entire message is forget about me, try to think about we. That's his basic, that's a summary. I just summarized the whole book. This is what this book is about. How the me should become and can become we. That's what this book is about. Multiculturalism, you'll see another slide in a minute, but he recognizes the need for it. You'll understand in a minute why, but he also thinks that it went too far and it causes a lot of social fragmentation. So especially in England, some of the social issues in England are much worse there than we have here in terms of the breakdown of the family, in terms of children born out of wedlock, of course, poverty. He's really troubled by what's going on in his society, and he responds to it basically in saying, you've got to recover the religious dimension of life, or else your life is going to be meaningless and filled with crime and breakdown of families and so forth. So keep in mind that that's his project, and clearly it's a social theorist project and an educator's project and so forth. So here is his response: what's wrong with postmodernism? So postmodernism, this is actually a philosophical question that I cannot really do justice to, but from his perspective, postmodernism is wrong primarily because it promoted moral relativism. And he thinks that it's not the case that everything is like everything else. No, some things are good, something are not good. Values exist. There is a reality to value. It's not just stuff that is in your imagination or in your stuff that you imagine, or stuff that you promote, or stuff that you prefer. No, you can argue for the reality or objectivity of certain values. He's all about responsibility, how we can teach children and adults to become responsible for each other, even when the other is not Jewish. That's the issue here. The other is not Jewish, but I need to care about the other, and I need to create social structures that will enable me to be living next to people who think very differently from myself. Okay, that's the challenge. And he's going to really push the centrality of the families. Family is crucial, and family together with other families create community. So everything happens to him on the level of the family, the community, the voluntary association, but not on the level of the individual. The individual is less important here, which is quite different from what we've seen, I guess, even last week, where the focus of the 1960s revolution was all about me, me, me. Okay, so here's his critique of multiculturalism. That's from his last book, Morality. So you can see that multiculturalism began with the right kind of the right insight. The right insight is that you've got to recognize that you cannot talk just on the level of universal ideas, because people don't live on the level of the universal idea. They live in bodies, and bodies they live in time, they live in space. There's a local dimension, a particular dimension, unique place. You cannot get rid of what makes us different. We are each different. We are not the same. And here he's speaking primarily, I think, to Christian philosophers and theologians who always, basically, when they talked about religion, they had in mind Christianity. And they talked about morality, they had in mind the Western tradition as they understood it. And he's saying, no, this universalism is not the right thing because you have differences. But things got out of hand, so to speak. So he says in the middle, the emphasis on the individual as the bearer of rights and of autonomy as the supreme value of the social order gave rise to identity politics. Are you familiar with that term, right? Identity politics. We are living in it. We cannot even talk to each other. That was one of the issues that was really problematic for him. People lost the ability to talk to their neighbors. How do I restore that? That was his job. How do I restore the ability to talk? So identity politics, he claims, deepened the fragmentation caused by multiculturalism. So multiculturalism began it, but it got worse over time. And what he's trying to do is to avoid getting into a situation of non-communicating ghettos. One group here, one group there, and they cannot really talk to each other. So what he's all about is kind of restoring the common good. How do we restore the common good? Because multiculturalism abandoned ideas of common good, common ground and the common good. That's what he wants to restore. That's the project. He came up with this wonderful expression, the dignity of difference. Does it ring a bell? Does it make sense? The dignity of difference. We are all different. I'm a twin, and even between me and my twin, you can see a difference, right? So there's no such thing as two individuals who are going to look alike, think alike, act alike, blah, 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 right? It's impossible. And he basically says, let's cherish the difference. Let's not try to gloss over the difference. So he defends pluralism, ethnic, religious, cultural, and so forth. We have a right to be different. That means that the Muslim and the Christian and the Jew and the Hindu and the Buddhist, this is all part of, British society, but also American society. We're all living next to each other, and we should allow each one to be different. However, look at the one in the middle. The one in the middle is, what does it take to really have dignity of difference? You have to have a sense of duty. And that's what we lost. We no longer talk about duties. We only talk about rights. So he's basically saying rights, it's not the end of the story. If you have rights, you also have duties, and you have obligations, and you have restraint. That focus on restraint, on self-control, it's a very Aristotelian, actually, understanding. But he's saying, throughout his writings, he said that's what we need to learn. We need to learn how to curb our enthusiasm, right? to use Larry David's line. But that's what it is. You have to learn how to be, basically how to be dignified. The word dignity, I love this phrase. That's the title of a book, right? That's the title of his book. But that phrase goes to the heart of the matter. There's a dignity in difference, but you can't have just difference without the dignity, and not the other way around either, okay? So why do we need that? Because if our society is religiously, ethnically, culturally, philosophically, ideologically diverse, it's better. The society is deeper. When everything becomes the same, and that sounds like where we are going in our country right now, right? That flattens everything out. And he's against that flattening of the society, of the culture, and human life. So I don't know if this is I cannot say which book I love most, but each book that he writes is written so well. I always say to myself, I wish I could have been a good writer as he is, because he knows how to tell a story and how to be very succinct and very alive at the same time. So then religious pluralism is good. So where's philosophy? What's the role of reason? And basically that's the challenge. The challenge is, why do we need, I'll put it this way, if we're so different from each other, how can we communicate above the difference, beyond the difference, across the difference? That's the challenge. And he thinks that that's basically the job of philosophy. Philosophy can help you get there, I think, at least to some extent. And that's why his writing is so analytically clear. So that's the connection between religious pluralism, which was very much, he was for religious pluralism, but he was also very big in the conversation about science and religion. And I love this paragraph because it shows you his style. You can see the cadences. I don't remember if he was a pianist. I think he studied piano, studied some music. There's a musical kind of sensibility here. Science is about explanation. Religious is about meaning. Science analyzes, religious integrates. Science breaks things down to their component parts. Religions binds people together in a relationship of trust. Science tells us what is. Religion tells us what ought to be. Science describes, religion beacons, summons, calls. So you can see that it's all, you understand what he's trying to say. So he's not saying that science and religion is the same thing. No, science and religion are different. Each one has its own dynamic, its own domain, if you wish. But at the same time, he doesn't want to put them 100% apart from each other. What he's going to show us is how they can complement and why they complement each other. So the picture is from the Templeton Award in 2016. And what he's saying in the information that I put on the slide here is that he doesn't want the conflict model. The conflict model dominated the conversation at least since 1870s. And the conflict model, the assumption that religion necessarily has to be the opposite of science, that's a mistake in his mind. I happen to share that view as well. And what he's trying to look at the last line, science and religion enrich each other, but without losing their difference. So that's the issue. How can you stay other, different, but cooperate, collaborate, and work together to the enrichment of the common good? So that's kind of the vision that he's trying to convey to all of us. And I have to say that in the Christian community, especially more maybe among Protestants and even among Catholics, he has a very big following. So a lot of people actually appreciate his insights about science and religion. So now let's get to Jewish things. How did all that fit into Jewish, especially biblical doctrines? And again, I think that there's such an integrity in everything that he writes. So here's an example. If you want to ask yourself, well, the relationship between science and religion, how does it relate to the Bible? He says, go to Genesis, go to the story, the first story of Genesis that every Jew knows at least something about, and look at how the Bible teaches us about the origin of the universe. That's the beginning of the conversation. And he's saying, what does it mean for God to be the creator of the world? What does the belief in creation means? It means God is not within nature and subject to its laws, but beyond nature. That's a key. That statement is very different from what we heard last week, right? Last week from Zalman Schachter Shalomi, we did not hear that. So what he's doing, he is emphasizing divine transcendence. But divine transcendence is not the end of the story, because God also, according to the biblical narrative, created human beings in the image of God, right? So what he's saying is, from God, as he says, thus is born the concept of the will. Okay, but God wanted to create the world. He didn't have to create the world. So thus is born the concept of the will and its associated ideas. So choice, agency, moral responsibility. All this is what God has. God has choice, God has agency, God has moral responsibility, and we humans, created in the image of God, have the same thing. So if you ask yourself, what does it mean to be created in the image of God? Rabbi Sachs tells you what it means. It means that God endows the human person with these same attributes, exercised, to be sure, in the context of finitude and morality, but real nonetheless. So when people say, don't talk to me about agency, it's all determined. No, he's saying that it's not determined. There is freedom. We are free. We are free to choose. We are free to make mistakes. We are free to arrange our life in all sorts of ways, some good, some not so good, but there is freedom here. So it's both divine transcendence, and the immanence is not in the world, but it's in the human being, in the human choice. So here's another quote where he's basically saying, he makes the connection that I just explained to you, the relationship between divine creation and human freedom. The discovery of the Abrahamic monotheism, and it's not just Judaism, Abrahamic monotheism means that it's also Christianity and also Islam, which transformed the human condition, endowing it with meaning and thereby rescuing it from tragedy in the name of hope. Judaism is about hope for him. Hope is connected to freedom, to the ability to change, to the ability to choose. Okay, so if God created the physical universe, then God is free. And if God made us in his image, we are free. That's the moral of the story. We are free. If we are free, then history is not a matter of eternal recurrence. That's a reference to Nietzsche, which of course he critiques. Because we can change ourselves, we can change the world. That is the religious basis of hope. So that's in a nutshell what Judaism is all about. It's a religion of hope. It's a religion that emphasizes freedom. Obviously, Pesach is coming in 3 weeks, right? So Pesach is all about that. Passover is all celebrating that notion. If you ask me where he got those ideas, the two major influences on his life, especially Soloveitchik, and then Soloveitchik is an interpreter of Maimonides, so you can't understand Sachs without it. But I won't get, if there were this were a course about Sachs, I would have taught you more about how he relates to Soloveitchik. But it's clearly Soloveitchik was one of his major teachers. And go back to the lecture I gave on Soloveitchik last year, and you'll see quite a lot of information about Soloveitchik if you don't know about him. So here's the argument. What is the Jewish task? We as Jews have a mission to the universe, if you wish, mission to humanity, mission to the world. And the minute is to universalize our particularism, to say there's something really, really important here, and that is meaningful to all of human beings. So I like to talk about him. I'm going to introduce you to a concept that is not well known among people who are outside of the academy, but I look at him as a post-secular thinker. Post-secular means that he lives in the secular world, but he knows that there's something really problematic about secularism alone. And post-secularism is an attempt to address what is problematic about the secular world and how can we improve things. So I spent since 2012, actually, so that's 14 years, I've spent a lot of my academic work on post-secularism. If you don't know anything about it, this is one particular book. There are many, many books. I started with creating a bibliography. So in the bibliography, we had more than 1,000 items. Can you imagine? It's a big topic if you really want to understand where we are. But after September 11, people realized that something really is not properly explained in the West about the role of religion. Because according to the secularization thesis, which dominated the academic discourse since at least 1917, as societies become modern, they become secular. And secularism was believed to be a necessity. You cannot be modern and be religious, okay? Post-secularism was coined in 1982 to be precise, but in the early 1980s, early 1980s, people said, well, no, they don't explain things. Religion didn't disappear. Religion is very much in every community, in every group of people, the religious dimension exists. So you can't just say, do it at home, but don't do it in the public sphere. So post-secularism is rethinking the role of religion in the public sphere. And he very much is a post-secular thinker who says, yes, religion has a place in the public sphere. We can talk about religion in the public sphere. Last night, if you watched, what's his name, James Talarico, the candidate in Texas, when this guy who is 36 years old saying, there was a Jewish rabbi that 2,000 years ago said to do A, B, and C, and D. That's for you post-secularism, because he's saying religious language is not something that you just privatize or domesticate. You have to do it in the public domain. So Talarico is an example, Buttigieg is an example. There are many examples of other people, and of course, there are more complicated examples of that. So post-secularism is complicated, and I've written quite a lot about that. So I look at him also as a public theologian. I share with you this image because that's from their website, from the website of the Jonathan Sachs legacy. And you can see, you can compare that. If Shavta Shalomi were to do this image, what would we see there? We would have seen other symbols, right? We would see a symbol of Buddhism, a symbol of Hinduism, not here. So here the focus is primarily on the monotheistic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And he basically, as a public theologian, teaches and wants to shape our conversation, make our politics, God-centered politics is a politics of freedom. That kind of statement, by the way, almost word to word, was uttered by a fair person I mentioned last time. That's Michael Lerner. Michael Lerner in the 1990s also talked about God-centered politics, and he's on the left side of the political spectrum. But anyway, I look at him as a public theologian, and he's also a person who has, I'm going to skip this, but he's a person who has a lot to say also about political theology. A key concept in his teachings was the concept of covenant. So basically, covenant is not it's not just like a contract. It's not a contract. It's beyond a contract. Covenant is a kind of a sharing, a bonding. The one metaphor for a covenantal relationship is marriage. So it's not just a contract, even though there is a contractual, you can say, dimension of contract even in a marriage, but it's beyond that. So he's basically saying, again, covenant is about creating a we out of the multiple I's. Okay? So how do we create something that we share? How do we create something that we all agree? And covenants are they're not obstructions. They're born in specific time and place. You have to talk about them. So in marriage, for example, you have to remind yourself why you married to this person, what bonds you to this person, how did you start, why you're still together, all that. And that's exactly what Judaism is about. Basically, that's what he's saying here. That in our holidays, we repeat a certain story and we teach a certain understanding of what bonds Israel to God in a covenantal relationship. Here I give you two examples that come from different texts, but basically it's the same idea. This is something very common here. He has an ability to express his ideas in more than one ways. But the key point here, Moses summons the people to humility and responsibility. So being chosen doesn't mean we are the best. No, it's not. It's about responsibility to others and remembering that you're not God, remembering that you have obligations to other people. And the main obligation is to create a just society. So that's his project, how we create a just society that honors human dignity and freedom. That's a social theory, right? You see what he's doing here? And he said it in numerous ways throughout his work. So I'll skip that, but that's the idea of covenantal politics, basically what our politics should be. And imagine if our public officials will be able to speak about our public life and political life in the level that he did, the quality will go up considerably. What's our moral task? We have a moral task, and that's to be the responsibility for creating a sustaining society that honors the image of God. So when the people misbehave, or there's so much criminality, so much fraud, so much terrible things happen in the world, they are undermining the concept of the being created in the image of God. So that's the moral task for all Jews. Collective responsibility is not just for Jews, but it's toward every person, to every human being. The key idea here is the ethics of care. I've been writing a lot about ethics of care, but that's in a sense what it means to be Jewish. And one aspect of what it means to be Jewish is really to care about others. Within the community, outside the community, and to create the educational system that facilitates the ability to care for others. So that's his vision. Again, philosophically speaking, these are the two philosophers who inspired him most on this score. Buber more than Levinas, but Levinas, again, Levinas is a topic for a good philosopher who we can talk about in a separate lecture. Too complicated to get into it right now, and also time is running out. So if you ask about other topics, yes, he was very concerned about technology. He understood, as he said so beautifully, I love his kind of pithy statements. Technology gives us power, but cannot guide us how to use that power, okay? And right now we're smack in the middle of struggling with what does it mean to live with AI? And what does it mean to live with this entire technology that surveils everything that we say and eventually everything that we think? That's coming up. So Hans Jonas is another philosopher that I wrote about. I have a whole book about him. So wonderful person who understood the challenges of technology. Here is an example of his commitment to environmentalism and a person who really understood the challenge of the eco-crisis and said that Judaism has a lot to say about it. And what he says is really not much different from what Arthur Waskow, who was mentioned last time, what Michael Lerner said, also mentioned him last time. So Zionism, I'm doing it a little bit faster because I want us to get into some conversation. He was a Zionist, but he was also critical of what's going on in Israel. Mainly, he was very upset about the politicization of religion in Israel. And he really thought that what needs to happen, religion needs to stay on the level of civil society, not in the government and not in the bureaucracy. The machinery of the state should not be governed by religious ideologies. On the Palestinian issues, most people are not aware he was actually for Palestinian state. And he was also imagined what in fact is happening in Israel right now, an Arab minority. Israel has more than 20% Arabs, in case people are not aware of that. About 23, I think, or maybe by now it's 28%. But these are very capable people who are engaged in all sorts of activities within the society. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are engineers, and so forth. And he said that that's good. That's a good thing, but Israel has to create its own social ethos, and the ethos has to be rooted in the history and text of the Jewish tradition. His vision, his big vision, is Israel should be a liberal democracy. Whether that's going to happen or not remains to be seen. Right now, it doesn't look so good, right? The challenges to Israeli democracy are serious, at least as much as they are here. At least that's an ideal, how to keep Israel as a liberal democracy that will be a pluralistic society and not kind of give up on its pluralism. So this is from an older book of his, but basically he kind of gave his 10 commandments, so to speak, or he summarized it in 10 points about inclusivism. So this is from an earlier book from 1993, early part of his life. It's interesting. I'm not sure to what extent at the end of his life he would say the same thing, but you get the point that inclusivism, pluralism, that's what he's about. That's a book about him, and the message is that Judaism is all about joy. He speaks about covenantal happiness as opposed to individual happiness, but really he really believed that Judaism can create a beautiful way of life for all people. And look at the top where he says, living well, very well. What does it include? Includes blessedness, righteousness, justice, loving kindness, loyalty, love, and above all, holiness. That's his summary. So we had a series of 3 people. Each, if you attended all 3 lectures, you probably have a preference to one of the 3. I'm not going to tell you what, how to think about them, but each one of them really contributed something very special. And I don't think that you can understand the modern Jewish condition without talking about the Holocaust. It's simply impossible. I don't think you can talk about the modern Jewish condition without talking about spiritual renewal, spirituality, the spiritual quest. That's Shachta Shalomi. And I don't think you can talk about modern Judaism without taking into consideration or thinking through what pluralism, the challenges of pluralism, as did Rabbi Sachs. So if you ask me why bother with Jewish philosophy, I give you kind of a summary why Jewish philosophy is important, why I don't think the Jewish existence can just be going to the synagogue and maybe getting what I need as a Jew just in what we get in the synagogue. Rather, it really requires us to engage the Jewish tradition, the text, the history, the culture, the sociology. Every aspect of Jewish existence requires engagement on a deeper level, and that deeper level is provided by people who are philosophically trained. I'm not saying that they alone can do it, but I'm saying that really is necessary. And for next year, if anybody is interested, you can communicate with Lisa Kaplan and with Professor Mervis. Here are some suggestions that I have in mind. These are all 4 books that deal with those issues. So I already, more than 20 years ago, I published the only book to this day on women and gender in Jewish philosophy. I did it as a conference here, and then it came out as a book. So women and gender is a topic, Jewish philosophy and nature. That's my book that is coming out in June, Jewish environmentalism in the secular age. Jonas, that's my book on Jonas. If you want to talk about technology, because we have we can't really not think about Judaism and technology today. And of course, on politics, that David Novak, associated with conservative Judaism, but a very important political thinker. So this is where we are. Any comments, any suggestion, any question? What do you have online?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the first question. Can
Oh,
you talk,
You're gonna take the.
I have a microphone, so, can you talk a little bit about how you felt about pluralism in the Jewish community? So between different groups of Jews.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So honestly, it's easier to talk about pluralism in the society at large, a pluralism within. I know that the book, the Dignity of Difference, came out originally in 2002, and there was a big debate about it in England, and he had to revise the book a bit. In 2003, he softened certain things. So there's no doubt that I know for fact, actually, I know the issues in British Jewry, that there was criticism from the left, from the conservative, and more reform than conservative. From the reform community, there was a criticism of him. People on the right of him, on the ultra Orthodox community, didn't consider him their representative. So he actually represented, technically speaking, even though he was known as the chief rabbi of the United Hebrew communities in the Commonwealth, it actually only represents certain brand of Orthodox community. Nonetheless, so there's no doubt that it's a lot harder to do business among Jews than between Jews and Gentiles, I would say. Don't quote me on that. But I think that he understood the difficulty. What does that mean? Look, he was very sophisticated in the use of language. So he had to navigate his way. To me, what's so powerful about him was his personality and the dignity. He really carried himself with a lot of dignity, and that's, I think, today maybe in short supply. So that's my answer. It's not what did they do about each and that or that issue in England. That's I cannot answer right now. Yeah.
Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. You need to give her the.
Yeah, who is it?
The lady here.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm a huge fan of Lord Jonathan Sacks, Rabbi Sacks.
He wants you to sit down because of the people so people see you. So
thank you so much. This was a wonderful lecture.
Pleasure.
I'm from Canada. I mention that specifically because of what he says about multiculturalism and how it's actually a failed social experiment. I have a question for you. Do you think that his I'll call it idealism about life, about
Can you speak
Israel?
louder? So
Okay. Do you think that he would have lost some of his idealistic thinking post October 7th?
yeah. Okay. So that's a very good question. October 7th really was, in a sense, a shock, right? It's a trauma. It's a shock because if the state of Israel was supposed to create a safe haven to Jews everywhere else in the world, from all over the world, that would be the safest place. That didn't happen. So in a sense, you can say that October 7th created kind of a disconfirmation of the Jewish state. I don't think that he would have lost his idealism. I don't think that ideals, maybe I'll answer it this way. Ideals are like, as he uses the word, to summon, to beacon, to call. It's something that you're trying to get. It's not something that you can package and say, or possess and have it with you. No. So he will continue to aspire and inspire other people what Israel could be. Were he alive today, he would be, I think, quite critical of what's going on in Israel, given the polarization in Israel, the corruption in Israel, the rise of crime in Israel. There are a lot of problems in Israel. And he did not shy away from calling out people for that. But remember, the major, how shall I put it, the major insight that he has is that Israel must have separation of religion and politics. Unless that happens, things will continue to be bad. So in that sense, he's going against the stream, so to speak. He's not a lot of people in the religious Zionist movement do not say that. So I think I think that his ethical commitment, his moral passion will allow him to remain hopeful, if that's your question. Would it be, you have no choice. I mean, we're after October 7th, and we still have hope. If you don't have hope, what can you do? Commit suicide? That's not an option. It definitely does not recognize. And if you had a chance, or maybe you can ask Lisa to give you access to, we had a conference about happiness. Just when did we have it? Just a few months ago, right? Whatever.
3 weeks.
When was it?
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. It seems to me a long time. But in that conference, there was a wonderful lecture by a psychologist from Israel, and she showed the complexity of Israeli responses to the trauma of October 7th, and what's happening in Israel in the response to that trauma. And what happens is very high level of civic involvement, very high. Voluntarism in Israel is 10 times, if not 20 times more than in this country. So there are emotional issues, there are psychological challenges, but there's also a lot of camaraderie. And Israel, even after October 7th, ranks number 8 in the world in the level of happiness. How is that possible? It's possible because there's a lot more social cohesion and people care. What we have lost in this country is the ability to care. We just don't care. Remember that famous jacket that somebody wore?
Yeah.
I don't care. Well, that's what's going on.
From the top.
Yeah. So a gentleman
Actually,
here.
let me do one from online and
Okay.
run back there. Does the universalizing particularity idea get discussed in a specific work, or is it more of a theme that runs throughout his work? In either case, where's the best place to
Okay.
find such
Excellent
discussion?
question. The best place actually is the book, Universalizing Particularity. He chose that title. That's the book in my series that he chose the title. So it's a theme that runs throughout his work, but it appears in so many quotes here and there. So yes, it's more of a theme, but that's the message. The message is Judaism has something special and unique and worthwhile to humanity. And humanity has to listen to it. So he's not out there to convert people. He leaves it up to people to decide what they want to be and how they want to be in the world. But he said, don't give up on the message. Don't think that it's only about nationalism, let's say. Don't think that it's all about, otherness. And definitely it's not about victimhood. That's why he was so critical of Fackenheim. And by the way, I should have said it, but in the book, One People, he said of all the people who have written of the Holocaust, Fackenheim is the best. That's how he evaluates Fackenheim. That's what he wrote in 1993. Later on, he said, but even though he's the best of the Holocaust, post-Holocaust theologian, there's a problem in what he did, and he critiques him. So, yes, sir.
You'd mentioned that somewhere around 2012, Rabbi Sachs became concerned about or expressed concern about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I made a mistake because the book actually was 209, so already 209.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you haven't gone into that. What were his concerns about it? What did he?
Well, you would imagine that kind of, how shall I put it? The main concern, it's in this book. Okay, so this book is future tense. And if I'm going to ask you, why did he choose that title? What is future tense about? So future tense, you're saying it's about being tense. Okay. Future tense, you can say, oh, it's only about the future. Yes and no. It's future tense. What was the name of God? What did God say to Moses when Moses said, I want to know, who am I talking to? What is God telling him? Eheye asher eheye. I will be who I will be. In English, it's usually translated in the present tense. I am who I am, but that's a mistranslation. So that's the idea here. The idea here is that the future is always open. You don't know what God will be. A lot depends on what you're going to do, obviously. So future tense refers actually to the divine name, Eheye. But the point is that it became very clear after September 11 that anti-Semitism is more present than it was before. So for a while, the thought was, well, post-Holocaust, anti-Semitism is kind of subdued, it's kind of under control. And there was Vatican II, there was collaboration, and more than collaboration within Judaism, Christianity, and even to some extent Islam. September 11 put an end to it. So he's responding to the reality after September 11th, when there's also a significant rise, not just in Christian anti-Semitism in Europe, but also Islamic anti-Semitism. So this book also deals with the rise of Islamic anti-Semitism and what is being taught in Muslim school. What is that? So,
Nothing.
okay, so this comes from his concern to the rise of anti-Semitism and also what will happen among Jews. So how can Jews remain one people? That's always an issue to him. Remain one people while having diversity within. So that's the challenge. And he's absolutely right. Anti-Semitism is a problem, as we know right now, is more than we look. When I started teaching in American universities, that goes back 50 years ago, anti-Semitism was not paramount, was not, but now it is. So now I have to think differently, and he responds to that. But it's more than just anti-Semitism.
So is that
Yes.
coming from multiculturalism, from pluralism? I mean, where's it coming
Where
from?
it's coming from. So it can come from all sorts of issues. Yes, it could come. So you can say, well, multiculturalism is responsible for anti-Semitism. That would be, I think, that's pushing it. He's not going to say that. But when it's always think of us, the me culture, or the identity politics. Identity politics could cause a negative perception of the other. So the challenge is how do I allow for pluralism, but at the same time without negation? That goes back to the concept of dignity, the dignity of difference. So, but he shows. There is anti-Semitic themes in various teachings, especially in the Islam, not especially, but including in the Islamic world. So you have a lot of historical factors, also contemporary factors, also challenges with the state of Israel, of course, the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian issues, the unresolved Israeli-Arab conflicts. Who knows what's going to happen next? Maybe things will happen in a better way. I don't know. Okay, so wonderful to be with you. Thank you all for joining, and to see you. Read Jonathan Sacks.